US President Donald Trump's move to impose 30% tariffs on South African exports has raised alarm, particularly about its impact on the labor market. Many fear the tariffs could lead to a jobs bloodbath and add strain to already struggling industries. Let's speak more about this impact. Bring in COSATU's Parliamentary Coordinator in Matthew Parks, who joins us now via our video link. Matthew, it's great to see you. Thanks as always for making time for the SABC News channel. I wonder what your feeling is, given where we stand at the moment. So much has been said, even by Trade and Industry Minister Pakstau, about South Africa's continued efforts to engage the United States. But despite all of that, including your president being inside the White House, here we are.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. Look, number one, it's extremely concerning. We have an economy which has barely grown 1% for the past 17 years. We have a 43% unemployment rate overall. We have a youth unemployment rate of 72%, and of course, entrenched levels of poverty, inequality, and so on. The US is our second largest trading partner. It's the world's largest economy. We have 500,000 South African jobs linked to trade with the US, linked to investment, going both ways, even from South Africa. And many of these are covered through AGOA, for example. So a 30% tariff hike not only is unaffordable for any company, they will not be competitive in the US market, but also the fact that we are at 30% and our neighboring states are all at 15%. Our economic equivalent competitors, whether it's Chile or other countries, are at 15% or thereabouts. That's a problem. We just can't afford this kind of a blow. So I think for us, it's critical that we do need to be calm, but we need to sort this crisis out. We can't afford to see a single job loss. We are very fearful about, for example, citrus farm workers from the Western Cape to Limpopo, about motor manufacturing workers from the Eastern Cape to Gauteng and KZN. We just can't afford to experiment. But what needs to be done, and what we need to do now, is to focus on the solution. The Department of Trade Industry has put it on the table with the US colleagues, a set of bold, mutually beneficial, often even exciting things that even can help create jobs in South Africa and also address the US deficit concerns and so forth. A set of package for trade. Those are good things. We think that they need to be given space to have those engaged with the US colleagues. But some of the issues we think why we're at 30%, not 15%, is because of the bilateral strains with the US and South Africa. And we think all of those issues can be quite easily resolved. For example, there is no such thing as white genocide, but there's plenty of space for a partnership around law enforcement, support to South African law enforcement, be it around resources or training or intelligence and so forth. We think there's space for us to do a better job communicating what exactly is broad-based black economic empowerment, and that actually is inclusive. It's inclusive of white women and people, white workers, white people with disabilities. But also there's equity equivalence, which many companies, including from the US over years, have actually exploited. But there are often, many companies don't know about that. And that's been lost in the broader discourse of fake news this year. They think there's space to reduce some of the red tape and so forth. And of course, the Expropriation Act has been unfairly used as a political football. There is space to have a discussion around regulation, which are actually overdue, to just provide clarity and to actually affirm the quite comprehensive checks and balances, security of ownership and so forth, security of rights of all parties, including workers, through regulations. We think those things can be dealt with. Yeah. But also we need to have a bit of a frank conversation with our domestic lunatics, the AfriForums, the Sakalichas, the Niasas, the Freedom Front Pluses, who have gone to the US to spread fake news, hate speech, racial incitement. Also, the economic freedom fighters must also grow up, to be honest, because their constant populist race-baiting behavior, it fuels these things. And why we're being a little bit blunt about this is because we have South African farm workers and motor manufacturing workers whose jobs are now at risk because these organizations, for partisan point scoring, have chosen to place their social media popularity contests at the head of South Africa's fundamental economic interests and at the head of South African workers. So we need to have a frank discussion because government has been making its effort. The president went to the White House, is making an effort to reset things. We can't be constantly undermining a very delicate situation by populist theatrics on the side.
Yeah. Whilst there's a debate even today about how we got here, I think we all agree that the chickens are coming home to roost. There has been a lot of criticism that South Africa just didn't spend enough time working on a contingency plan. In trying to respond to that, the Trade and Industry Minister has said, look, it was difficult to kind of figure out what the plan was in a context where essentially there's radio silence from the White House. Is this criticism against South Africa's lack of a plan B, do you think, well-founded?
Look, no government can be perfect, and our government, of course, will not be perfect. No doubt there will be mistakes, no doubt things could have been done better. But I think to be fair to government, and we know government has been working 24/7 on this issue. We've been in frequent contact with the presidency, with DIRCO, with DTIC on a daily basis on this journey. I don't think that Zimbabwe's government or the government of Vanuatu or the government of many other countries has been that much more better placed, more efficient than South Africa's government. There's a reason why they have 15% and why we have 30%. And the 30% or the 15% additional is because of the bilateral strain. So those need to be resolved. Some of those issues require intervention by the presidency, by the president himself as a leader of government, because some of these are slightly outside the parameter of the Department of Trade and Industry. So the issues need to be dealt with. I think for us right now, the moment is not for point scoring. The moment is not for pointing fingers. We can have the post-mortem discussion afterwards. The point right now is for government to be given the space and support to go and address these issues. The trade issues, yes, there's some issues around pork and poultry must be addressed, and we think a little bit faster, no doubt about it. But we think we also need to have a fundamental discussion around the bilateral relationship and the strains to provide some sort of conclusion on all these matters, because those are going to continue to bedevil the issues unless we resolve them at the highest level of government. And that's why we think the president is well placed to continue on his efforts, which he did quite well in the White House visit in May, but we need to do so quite quickly. But I think we also need to be giving some support and some space and benefit of the doubt to the presidency, to the ministers for trade industry and so forth, because the constant harping by armchair critics and the constant spreading of fake news is doing real damage. And if I can be blunt, Afrikaner farmers are going to pay a price because the citrus and other exports from the agricultural sector need the tariff, a manageable tariff regime. Motor manufacturing, where many Afrikaans workers work, will be hit hard if Mercedes, for example, was to close or to exit. So we think those who like to beat the drums on the far right, and also the friends in the EFF need to reflect a little bit about what are they doing to exacerbate the situation, because we can't blame the US, for example, when they see South Africans going to the US and spreading lies about white genocide, white persecution, whites not being allowed to work, all this other nonsensical made-up propaganda. Of course, it's going to make matters more complicated, and those are things that they need to take responsibility for. But I think from our side as COSATU, we're going to continue to work closely with the presidency, DTIC, DIRCO, with our colleagues in organized business, and we hope that other parties will also now begin to play a responsible role and less of a pyromaniac role.
Yeah, look, no matter where you are on the ideological spectrum, it seems no one in South Africa stands to win if this goes ahead as envisioned. Matthew Parks, COSATU's Parliamentary Coordinator, thanks very much indeed.